We have had massive amounts of technology changes, different ways to communicate, different methodologies, different types of systems, but also the interconnectivity is spectacular. We are all done with multiple different streams of information, and literally the average American has four different ways that people communicate with them digitally, from email to texting to DM on this app versus this one versus this one. Most of us have multiple email addresses. We really have an aspect of our society is inundated with all kinds of communication to the point that we're overwhelmed by it. And in the process of being overwhelmed, we start ignoring some of it just to maintain our sanity. In the supply chain, it really does have a huge impact because the supply chain relies on quality information and good communication up and down the entire supply chain. We have cloud computing services, which really has helped an awful lot. When it first came out, we all kind of looked at each other, what do you mean the cloud? And now it's a matter of this is part of our everyday slang. Artificial intelligence, it really hit the market just months ago, and now it's part of our everyday jargon in the aspect of we think it's just months ago. It's really been being developed for over the last decade until now. It really is stepping forward and eliminating jobs, or if you're smart, you're learning how to use it to get the better job that you want anyway in the process. Blockchain. We typically associate blockchain with cryptocurrency, but we should because cryptocurrency is totally dependent upon blockchain because that really is a distributed ledger system across the entire planet. And whoever is on it can actually see the exact transactions. There's so many good things about blockchain, and we'll talk about that later. But just so you know, I believe the blockchain is part of the wave of the future that with AI, we'll see huge things changing within our society as to how we deal with information, communicate, and also have security, which is really the cybersecurity now is becoming front and center. RFID tags. Once upon a time, you would toss an RFID tag on the trailer of a semi. Nowadays, we put RFID tags on individual items that we toss into a truck, and you can actually see how many different items are moving across the country in just one truck, and then watches are unloaded and shipped into process. We'll see all kinds of things happening, but we're seeing the beginning of these changes happening today and actually have been going on now for well over a decade. Once upon a time, we really had an ancient system where you'd have to sit down there and crank out things on cards, put them into a box, take them down to a computing center, and then they would get to it in a batch processing system after this batch was finished and this batch was finished because they didn't want to shut down the computers because it would take a 1 to 3 hour time frame to restart the computer. So the computers ran 24/7 on a regular basis, and they were shut down once a month just for regular maintenance in the process, and they were huge. They would fill an average size house just by the sheer physical size of it. Now your phone can almost do just about the same amount as you did the old original IBM 760 computer mainframes and so on. So we're looking at the market forces have really pushed us to shrink the overall size of the IT system, but also to step up the game. Once upon a time, July 5th, 1994, Amazon was launched in the garage of Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos. In the process, they created this giant monster that we call Amazon, which dominates the world to the point that they call it the Amazon effect. When the Amazon effect started destroying the malls across the country, they would simply go bankrupt because we like the methodology. We like the instantaneous aspect of we look on our phone, we go click, 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 something arrives at our house 24 hours later, and sometimes less. It's market forces. We are spoiled beyond belief. We have this super high expectation of the supply chain, and really the supply chain has really risen to meet that demand. When something takes 2 weeks to get it, we really sit down and we have this attitude problem because we're Americans. We want everything. We want it now. And by golly, we want a bunch of it because why not have the luxury and live in it too at the same time? Okay, that works. Interconnectivity, we're expecting that. We expect systems to talk to each other. And when one is talking the language over here and one's talking the language here and they don't communicate, we're really frustrated because of the fact, well, I want it now. How come you guys can't get along? So we look in the whole supply chain. We want it all to work. We want it to work well and have high communication. Once upon a time, we used to have the full mainframes. And then from the mainframes, we went to a thing called a back system, where you had a series of distributed computing to run an entire system. As I was going through graduate school, the dean of the school came to me and he was working on a system. And so him and I developed a back system. And instead of having a mainframe, we persuaded the administration to have an entire back system. We bought 12 back systems, put them around the entire campus. Every school had its own back computer, but they also talked to each other using a token ring network, which now is totally an antique, except we at the last minute, we changed to an Ethernet in the process, and you'll hear that terminology even in use today. We went from that back to using an even more distributed back system that we have microcomputers doing the same thing. It really was economies of scale. We started changing how we did business. We looked at from proprietary to a standalone to now connected, and now really in the aspect of full collaboration. This 4 points really does signify a lot of the IT methodology that's grown over the last 40, 50 years in a process of going from giant computers filling thousands of square feet down to your teeny tiny cell phone, which actually has more computing power than the entire Apollo program that landed on the moon. It's incredible how far we've advanced. Once upon a time, we had the Ethernet and the IBM token ring system. We had bus systems out there. You'd have information going along in little modules, and you'd see where it would get off. You had to plan for that and the timing of it. Then we had electronic data interchange, where they're talking back and forth on the Ethernet. And really, the year 2000 raised a whole series of terror across the country. All the old giant mainframes, we called them legacy systems because all the data was sitting there. They were all programmed with just 4 digits in the aspect of 19. Well, all of a sudden, the 19, the one would flip over into a two. Everybody thought the world will end. People had songs. We had actually parades out there waiting for the world to end at the year 2000, because everybody knew the entire infrastructure of computing would destroy and disintegrate, and we'd all be thrown back into cave-like levels. It really didn't happen, but everybody was prepared for it. I even was given a duty in the aspect of being the year 2000 manager. And I went through an entire college district and I coordinated all the thousands of computers that we had to make certain they were all updated. So this wouldn't happen to us. People across the entire world were terrified to death of what happened. But we started shifting at that point, going away from mainframes into enterprise resource planning systems, which is what we're still using today. A lot of it is distributed computing, but right now, electronic mail, file information transfer, we really went into a full-blown electronic commerce, which is where we're at today. And it's only going to get far more advanced with AI and blockchain. The next phase of standards is being developed today right in front of us. Artificial intelligence didn't just happen a year ago or 2 years ago. It's been coming on board for about the last 16, 17 years in different methodologies. Anything from robotic automatic processing into robots, all that is part of the world of AI. We just happen to lump AI into the language models that we're seeing that communicate back and forth with us. We're going to have a lot more collaboration. We're going to have a lot of different things built around different technologies. And really, we have to look at the blockchain, what's going to be out there. The infrastructure components, we're going to have interface, presentation devices, much more dense communications, and things being transferred back and forth with massive data transfers, hopefully full-blown cyber defense processes to protect it from people that want to hack into the system. Databases, we're tapping into that with a cloud-based architecture. We have the whole series of things. We've gone from the simple barcode to complex QR codes to really, you can sit in the back of an auditorium, take your phone and go and sit there and get whatever information you want to download. They have television commercials with QR codes on them. They have all kinds of different ways we're doing things. We're looking at capacity almost everywhere. We're really looking at the old main category of the legacy system architecture now to a client service architecture. You'll read about that in your textbook as well. So the supply chain, where we were, every major industry has history, including supply chains and including IT, except the supply chains, we depend so much on rapid communication that the IT history and the supply chain history are really combined. It's advancing the sale and delivery of goods to customers is part of the entire aspect of supply chain tech. The four infrastructures, proprietary, standalone, connected, and collaboration, those are the places where we can see a full-blown evolution within the supply chain tech that are almost joined at the hip, so to speak, in the aspect of delivering products all the way through from the beginning of raw materials right into the customer hands, which we all call that entire process the supply chain and the technology that delivers it. Take care.